Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Marche, the webinar director here at Advice Chaser. Before we introduce our guests and get started, I do need to do a little bit of legal housekeeping. Advice Chaser, the host of this webinar, is not a registered investment advisor. We cannot and do not give financial advice. Today's presentation is for educational purposes only and cannot be considered advice for any person's individual situation. Advice Chaser regularly hosts informative webinars such as this one, featuring a variety of knowledgeable professionals, many of whom are licensed advisors. Any opinions, ideas, jokes, or principles expressed by presenters are their own, and however true, funny, or interesting, are not endorsed by Advice Chaser. Please do not act on the information you hear today without consulting a qualified financial professional. Well, we're thrilled to bring you this educational presentation today. Attendees are muted, but we do encourage you to ask questions using the chat box. And as we go through today's webinar, if we are not able to get to your question, go ahead and leave your phone number as well. We will make sure someone reaches out to you to field that question after today's event. Once again, we want this experience to be as educational as possible, so please don't hesitate to ask for clarification or expansion of the material. I'd love to introduce you to today's presenter. We have him back, folks. JR is a certified financial planning practitioner who utilizes a unique approach and methodology called financial life planning. Life planning connects the dots between our financial realities and the lives we long to live. This method is based on the premise that advisors should first discover a client's most essential goals in life before formulating a financial plan, so a client's finances fully support these goals. As a lifelong learner, musician, and athlete, JR holds a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, trains Muay Thai, and has been playing the guitar for over 30 years. He actively performs and writes music in his band. And that's just a little bit about you, JR, and we're excited to have you back. Let's go ahead and get started today.
Sounds great. Okay, today's topic is cash flow and budgeting. One of the funniest things I've ever heard in financial planning is that budgets don't work. And sometimes there's some truth into that. And I just want to go and dissect the concept of cash flow and budgeting because as you see here on the screen, it is one of the most important aspects of financial planning, often overlooked. We don't look at budgeting and cash flow from the right perspective, which makes it way more challenging than it needs to be, right? It doesn't have to be difficult. It's often we make it more difficult than it really needs to be. And that's kind of like that's a theme I'll discuss as we move through this presentation. All right, moving on. Yes, so one of the reasons why I find budgets and cash flows difficult is because we often do it backwards. And what I mean by that is everybody goes, this is what we say to ourselves: I will see what I have left over at the end of the month, and what's left over I will save, and I'll stash that money into the things that I planned on saving into. And that's actually not the way you want to do it. You want to first set aside money for your wealth building initiatives. And then from there, you can utilize your money for whatever you want. That's a good way of looking at it. Okay, we can go to the next one. And I'm going to kind of go, So wealth building comes first. I just said that. Everything funnels down with that, and you arrange your lifestyle around that. Okay, so let's talk about arrange your lifestyle. So I said that I'm going to shift money immediately towards my wealth building. And then I'm going to arrange my life. So I'm going to have to, you can do whatever you want after you set aside money with your wealth building. Anything you can do, but the problem is that we all still have to eat. We all have to live. We all have to pay rent. We all have to, pay for our insurances. So that there is truth in you can do whatever you want with the money left over. but there are some things that we have to deal with. Oh, and taxes too. Forgot about those. We got to pay those as well. All right, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so managing your cash flow is vital. So I'm going to give you guys a rule that I utilize for people. And I find this rule to be very, very useful for, I would say, 90% of the people out there. You want to, here it comes, you want to set aside at least 15% of your gross annual income for wealth building and saving. Okay, that's the number. So that's what most people should sort of aspire to. And there's been a lot of research done on this. There was a book called The Richest Man in Babylon. His quote in the 1950s was about 10%. We found that 15% is, that's going to sort of, really help you achieve the goals you're trying to achieve. And that's that. But the problem with saying 15% and blanketed across the whole world is everybody's got different goals, right? And so that changes the number. See, if my goal is way bigger than the typical, I just need money for retirement, well, then we have a new number, don't we? Or better said, if I'm late to the game, 15% may not be the number to get me where I need to go. So therefore, we have to do a mathematical calculation to figure out what that percent needs to be to get me to where I need to go. Likewise, if I'm not a big spender, don't shortchange your current lifestyle for this sort of future lifestyle that really will never really come to fruition, right? And so there's a lot of discussion that needs to be had about the number at which I need to save every month, a lot of mathematical calculations, and there's some amazing tools out there. They're called future calculators. The time value of money calculators is another one you want to look for. And what they do is they solve for future concepts, right? What is the amount of money I will have in the future? What is the percentage rate of return I need to make in order to receive something? How much money should I save per month in order to reach something? These are what we call time value of money calculators. They're free everywhere. You can find them all over the internet. Very useful. Future calculators. Okay, next one. Okay, so this is, when I heard this from one of my mentors and I saw this, it was like, phew, blown away. I never knew this to be true. And so what does it say here inside? Why is it important to save now as opposed to later? How much money do you lose? You lose at the end, money accelerates at the end. Okay, so I'm going to say this verbally, and then in a second, I'm going to put it on the screen to show you what I'm talking about. So when I go and set aside a certain amount of money per month or per year to save, what happens is we get into this situation where like, I'll catch up, right? I missed out on a month, I missed out on a few months, I'll catch up. But what people don't understand is it's a small amount of money, right? If I set aside $500 a month or $250 a month or $1,000 a month to save, we think as if I miss the payment, well, then I'm only missing out on $500, or I'm only missing out on $1,000 that I didn't save and I can catch up at some point in the future. Yes, but what is really happening? What's happening is, you got to understand this. Saving is a finite number because we can't save forever. There's a point at which we're gonna stop. The point at which where we're gonna stop in the future is different for everyone. Some people want to retire at 65. Some people want to retire at 70. Some people can do it till they're 75. Some people are forced into retirement because of an ailment or something went wrong in life, right? And so we don't know when that date is, but the point is at some point it stops. So then what happens? Well, at the moment I stop, I am now left with the dollar amount I'm going to utilize to get me through the later years of my life where I'm not working anymore, right? That's called retirement typically. Okay, so when we have this finite point in the future, what is that number? Now I'm going to show you on my screen here what I'm referring to. Give me 1 second. I just got to share my screen. Here's what I mean. I'm going to kind of walk you through this. Okay, just nod if you can see my screen. Great. So what we have here is at the top, we have this, what we call an exponential curve calculator. And what's nice about an exponential curve means that as I save money into the things that will grow over time, they grow exponentially. And you can kind of, you can Google, exponential growth or compounding interest is the world a lot of people like to research. Okay, so I'm 25 years old, I'm retired at 65, and I pass away at 85 years old. I am going to set aside $10,000 a year for saving. Right, and that's just some random number. They're all round numbers, as you can see here, $100,000, and I assume I make 8%. It doesn't matter what the numbers are here. The concept still is the same. So year one, I've saved $10,000 and I earn my 8%. So I have $10,800. I do it again next year, $22,464 because I kept putting in money and I earned a percentage. So if I don't save money year one, the difference between $22,000 and $10,000 is about, let's just for the round numbers, please, $12,000. So one would think, oh, well, if I don't save this year, I'll catch up next year. I've only missed out on $10,000, $12,000. That is not correct. The correct way of looking at this is at the end. And what I mean is, at the end of this time frame of me saving, age 65, how much money do I have? It says $2.797 million. Well, how much money did I have the year before? Well, the year before I had $2.5 million. So what happens is by not saving this year and waiting to next year, I don't lose $12,000 in my lifetime. I lose $200,000 of wealth in the future. This is because money does this sort of process of we accumulate, it starts to grow, then it really takes off, and then it accelerates the most at the end. That's how compound interest really works. And so that's the phenomenon on why it's so important to get started right away. All right, I'm going to stop sharing and then back to you. Perfect. Okay, next slide. Tools to help us manage our cash flow. So one of the ways in which we do this is pen and paper. That still works in a viable way of doing it. Spreadsheets are another powerful tool. There's actually, yes, there's some free templates online. So the problem with pen and paper and spreadsheets is this. Every Sunday or every Tuesday, you have to sit down and gather the data from your online accounts, which makes it a little bit easier. It used to be the time we used to have to we used to have to balance our checkbook back in the day, and then you don't have to do that anymore. But you have to pull the data off. And a lot of times when I ask people how they manage their cash flow, they simply just tell me, like, yeah, like my rent's $2,000. I spend about $500 a month on food, and then I spend $100 a month on pizza being delivered and those kinds of things. And what happens is the numbers are a little off. So there's mistakes that often happen when you do it on pen and paper and spreadsheets. And plus it's work, it's a job. It's something you have to be committed to on a weekly, bi-weekly basis. Now, there's other things out there, and I don't know if many of you know this or not, but there are programs that offer automation. They update on a daily basis and tally all the numbers. And not only do they do that, they categorize the numbers for you into different sections. Like, so if you went to McDonald's, they would go, oh, she went to a restaurant, boom, it went to the restaurant category. So you see here, Mint, YNAB, Yodlee, Money Guide Pro, there's a slew of them. Some of them are free, and they do it for free, and very, very powerful. What I'm gonna do real quick is just show you some stuff that I've used. Not I use per se, but like what they look like, right? So that's what I do this, share screen. Right? And then I'm gonna just go like this. So here's one thing. What we like here is colors, right? And so organization, that makes things nice. And then this is like more of like a software program. And then I'm going to show you a spreadsheet. So this is a spreadsheet. Again, the color coding is real nice. The different sections, and watch what happens when I start typing things in, right? Now, let's say I make, $5,000 a month, and then my rent is $2,000, And then my food bill is 500. And then my entertainment bill is 500. And, you know, my doctor bills are $100 a month. And then what we can do here is some tallying down how much is left over for me to save. And if I zoom out on the right-hand side, we get our, and all financial people have to have pie graphs for everything we do. And so there's the pie graph. Can't forget our pie graph. All right, I'm going to stop sharing and bring it back to the presentation.
I do have a question here. How would that wealth building fit into what you were just doing there with your budgeting? So you're say doing the wealth building section first. Like, is there a part in there for it?
In these programs?
In those tools, yeah.
Yeah, of course. There's like a section in each one of them says, oh, this is what I set aside for wealth building. Now, often what will happen is when we do budgeting, so this is a pretty interesting anecdote. So a lot of us have these things called 401ks and retirement plans at work. And when we do budgeting, and I said in the beginning of the conversation, I want you saving 15%, right? And then you do your budgeting and you look and you're like, but I don't have enough money to reach 15% because, you know, I paid taxes, I paid healthcare and all the things and stuff. And I do have money left over, but I can't reach that 15%. Don't forget the 401k counted too, right? The 3 to 5% that you put in is another portion of it. So a lot of times we look at our budgets after tax. And so that counts too. Okay. So behavior. This is, even if we use automated systems, you still have to show up at least once a month and look at what happened and do some simple calculations. Here's what I say to people. For people using spreadsheets, you're gonna have to do a little bit more often, right? Weekly or bi-weekly. For people using these sort of advanced programs, what you wanna do is look at how you're gonna, so budgets, okay, so we have to think of future and what has happened, right? You have present tense and looking backwards and present tense looking forwards. So with looking backwards, we can see what we've done. But a budget is not about what has happened. It's what we want to have happen, which is really key. And so what we want to have happen is set aside money to go into the categories we need them to go into. And then also set aside money for wealth building or savings. The same, I'm using those words interchangeably. If you find yourself in a category, say, I was only going to spend $500 this month on food, I ended up spending $750. What you're going to have to do if you're going to really work on this and do it correctly, you have to reduce another category that you weren't planning on in order to stay on budget. And so that's really good advice, especially when you do something like buy a home and you're like, I just got this house, I just moved in, but I want to fix the fence. Well, you got to set aside money for fixing the fence. And and maybe you have to reduce the amount of money going into the restaurant category in order to set aside money for the fence. So
we have a question here. What about like doing some side jobs so that you can have some extra money that month?
What a great question, because we have that coming up on another slide. So why don't we jump on that next? Yeah, that'll come up now. That's how funny is that was said. Okay. I'm going to answer that question in a minute. We'll come back to that. So it's going to be part of the conversation. Okay, so one of the ways that we want to be really good about cash flow analysis and budgeting is being organized. Organization is key to this and makes it a lot easier. So I said the first step is that what we want to do is set aside money for wealth building. Well, where do you put it? You put it into your wealth coordination account. You have to create your wealth coordination account and designate that for only wealth building. Okay. Do not go into the bank and say, hey, I need a wealth coordination account. They're not going to know what you're talking about. It's not a real thing. Don't say, I need a WCA. Please set me up. No, just say to them, hey, I need a special checking account that I'm going to set aside money for my wealth building. And believe it or not, you actually are allowed to name checking and savings account for what you want them to be for, which is a great thing, because if you have accounts and you put a name on it, like, oh, this is the travel account, This is the wealth coordination account. This is going to be for my rent or something. Now you can start putting money into specific accounts every month, keeps things very organized. And you can name them, like you can customize them for whatever you want. It makes things really easy. And then there's a lot of people that speak about this, in the world of giving advice about like, I think there's like an envelope system I heard of, and there's all kinds of ways of doing this, but it's a common thing, and it's actually very helpful. Yeah. Moving on. Okay, this is another biggie. So when I do budgeting with clients, what I say to them is this: there's two ways to do this. I leave it up to you, or you leave it up to me, right? If I leave it up to you, I'm entrusting you with you having the discipline to put money into this account and not taking it out a few days later for that thing that you wanted to buy, right? So what often I say to them is put it into an account that when you have to move the money out of it to put it into the checking account again that you normally spend your money on, do you have to jump through hoops? Do you have to take that other step? See, if you're put in a position where when you go to take money out of that special wealth coordination savings account, you have to do something like it's a pain in the butt or an extra button to press or an extra thing to do, then it gives you a moment of clarity to breathe and come present. You see the word mindfulness. We talk a lot about mindfulness in money, right? If I can get present with what I'm doing, then I go, oh, do I really need this? So I'm going to give you guys a quick story because I think it's important. And so the concept, do I really need this? So recently I had to move locations. And now many of you, I'm sure, have moved before. What did you notice about that move you had to do? You had to throw out a lot of garbage, of things that you purchased that you couldn't live without at that moment. See, when we find something that we want to buy, we get this feeling in our belly. It's like we're driven. We have this burning desire to get it. And then we buy it, only to move a few years later from one location to another to go, I don't need this garbage anymore. Everything turns to garbage at some point in time. So ask yourself, do I really need to do this? And so what I love about when clients say to me, hey, JR, you know what? I don't trust myself. I want you to hold this money. It's not that I hold it per se. It's just they got to like email me, text me, or call me and be like, I need money. And they're embarrassed. So that little nugget of embarrassment's the perfect thing you need to keep you from overspending. So that's perfect. Okay, next slide.
Can you give an example of what an account like this might look like?
Oh, yeah, sure. It would be, so they're typically some kind of checking, savings, money market, or kind of account where a lot of times, so let's be clear, financial planners are known for helping people invest money, right? So inside those investment accounts, what will happen is they can set up their own special checking and savings and money market accounts where they can contribute money every month, and the money, it could go into that specific account. And in order to get the money out, they might have to sign a form, like sign a form to get the money out, or they might have to request a withdrawal or something. That's what I mean. And then there's these things called robo-advisors is a very common thing that people are participating in. Same thing. The robo-advisors will often offer checking and savings accounts with their investment accounts. And in order to get the money out, you have to do something, right? You have to hit a button or two to get it to your checking accounts. It's the process of transferring. So yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how this wealth coordination account would differ from, say, saving for retirement and maybe like a Roth or other sort of investment vehicle?
Very good question. I love this question. So think of the wealth coordination account like this. It's the place where money goes first. Okay. So I get a paycheck on a Friday. Friday, automatically, right? I automate money leaving my paycheck and going directly into my checking account that I designated as the wealth coordination account. And it's typically what? It's a percentage of the amount of money I make every week, right? We talked about 15%. So it goes in this account. When I pull money, push or pull money into my Roth or any other account besides 401k, 401k is different because it comes automatically out of the paycheck that moment, right? But for anything else I save money into, it gets pulled from this wealth coordination account. That's what I mean by that. So it's, now you don't have to do it like that, but it's, again, it's the concept of organization. So I move money from one place, it goes into this account. Then I decide that if it's automatically every month, I can put it into my Roth or put it, we don't have to go into Roth either. We can go into non-retirement accounts. Those are vehicles too we could save for our future, right? And so it can go into that one. It can go into certain kinds of insurance policies that have wealth building attributes, if you will. We can use it for, oh, this money, I'm going to store money for one day, I'm going to purchase a house and the down payment's going to come from there, right? They're all viable reasons to take money from that, but that's where I get it from. Okay.
Thank you. That really helped.
Okay, so this is going to answer the question the person had before. Review your current expenditures to see if you can be able to save money. So a lot of times people don't realize that they're overpaying their institutions unnecessarily. So the first one, insurances. It is quite often that you can save a few dollars a month. I can't guarantee that for you, but you can save a few dollars a month by changing the structure of your insurance policies. So there's something in insurance policies called deductibles. Deductibles are the amount of money I need to hit or pay first before the insurance comes in and solves the problem the insurance was set to solve. So the higher the deductible, the more money I pay, the less money per month I actually have to pay the premium or the policy premium. So that's interesting. So there's this relationship. So, but JR, but then that means I have to pay more money to the insurance company if I get in an accident. Right. How often are you getting in accidents? Once a week or like maybe 2 in a lifetime? So just for that one moment or 2 moments in your life that you never really needed, you're going to overpay the insurance company per month, every month for 20 years. Doesn't make a lot of sense, right? But again, this is one of those conversations where we go, hey, don't just go run out and do things without talking to somebody about that, right? But that's the relationship. You can save money per month by changing the structure of your deductibles. Same thing with medical insurance at work. Typically, companies are offering different kinds of insurance policies. They're offering high deductible plans, which will, again, same deductible concept, lower your monthly outlay per month. Real estate and mortgages, we can always refinance. So right now we're at an all-time low in rates. That's another way of doing it. Okay, so debt. If you make a conscious, strategic decision to pay off your debt at a certain amount per month in order to lower the expense of the drag of the interest that you pay to the bank, that will bring money back into your life. So there's a lot of strategies for that, a topic of another conversation. And then to answer your question, yes. Why don't you take the time to build your skill sets or meet with career advisors to improve your career opportunities, side hustles, LLCs, S corporations. There are so many ways to increase your income. You can only cut and cut and cut and cut and cut. And cutting and cutting and cutting and cutting is not that fun either. All right. I don't know a lot of people who love doing that, but what we can do is invest in ourselves, and that will eventually turn into higher incomes. So that's important. Next. Yes, automation. So the problem with budgeting is that we have to do it. Let me give you an example. Why do you think that we get our insurance through work, our health insurance, and it gets taken immediately out of our checking account? I promise you, if that was not an automation, half the country wouldn't have health insurance right now. They know that. They had to automate it for you, because what do? You get your paycheck and then you live your life based on what's left over. It was automated for you. Same thing with wealth building, automated. Make auto drafts, make it automatically move from one account to another. You don't have to think about it. It's easy. And at the end of every month, you can see what's left over. This is what I get to spend on myself for fun and enjoyment. Okay. Questions?
We did have a question here about when you have a higher deductible, obviously you'd need to save so that you could cover that deductible.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about emergency funds and their role in budgets?
Yes, so excellent question. Right. So I wouldn't tell somebody to raise their deductibles if they don't have enough money in the bank to even cover that deductible, right? So that's not good advice, right? So you want to make sure that you have plenty of money in the bank. So what does plenty of the money in the bank mean? So if you were to Google right now how much money you should have in an emergency fund, you will find a common thread of 3 to 6 months worth of your basic living expenses need to sit and live inside of a checking or savings account at all times. And that's not bad advice. That's actually pretty good advice. And what that says is if my bills, for round numbers, easy math, were $2,000 a month, that would mean I would need between $6,000 and $12,000 sitting in a checking and savings account at all times. All right, so that's one perspective. There's another perspective out there in finance. That is to have 6 months worth of your income. Much different number, much bigger number, right? So if a person or a family is making $100,000 a year, what that would say, gross $100,000, you would want up to $50,000, half of 100, 6 months of 100 in a checking or savings account. Now, what that does is something else. Bigger number, harder to achieve, could be a part of a good round, a good smart financial plan, but it does two things. Number one, it allows you to operate on a cash basis, so to limit the need for borrowing money and paying interest to other institutions, and that's a drag against your wealth. It also allows you to, for emergencies, obviously, but then the one thing that I love the most is business opportunities. And what's business opportunities? Business opportunities means, hey, if something is happening that I can find as a low risk investment choice with a high return, which does happen all the time in our lifetimes, happens quite often, well, then having lots of money in the bank is really advisable, right? So that's my opinion on, the range at which you can have money. 3 to 6 months of your expenses to as high as 6 months worth of your annual income.
Can you talk a little bit about what business opportunities you mean?
Yeah, sure. Business opportunities show up in all shapes and sizes. They're infinite. There's so many of them, but business opportunities show up in markets typically, right? Stock markets are business opportunities. Bond markets are business opportunities. Cryptocurrency markets are business opportunities. Real estate are business opportunities. Buying a business, someone else's business, is a business opportunity. Where do you get the money for these opportunities? You have to have it ready to go for when the opportunity comes. We don't know when the opportunity comes, but they do come. So I'll give you an example. Probably the most recent interesting business opportunity that has happened in our stock market in the last 10 years was COVID-19. The stock market dropped 40-something% in a matter of 3 weeks, turned around and went back up significantly. Now, if you were ready for that, where would you have gotten the money for that 40% drop? The drop, which doesn't look good on your already existing investments, okay, could have been a great opportunity for you if you were prepared for it. And that's what I mean by business opportunities. Same thing with like a business. Like if you have a skill set that you are really great at, and maybe you work for a company or you're a doctor or you're a therapist or something, other businesses end, they fall apart, things go wrong, but there's still a cash flow coming in, right? So you want to have money set aside so you can maybe become a partner in that business, right? Same thing with real estate. Real estate go up and go down in different areas of the country all the time. If the value of real estate drops, but it's still a great area for whatever reason, you can get involved. That's another business opportunity.
Can you talk a little bit about that wealth building account or that wealth, what was that, coordination account?
Mhm.
And can you talk a little bit about the priorities that you might want to set for that? And I'm having a question here about at what point do you save for retirement, kids' college, paying off debt? Like, is there a priority list
Yes.
that people go through for that?
Yes. So the answer is yes, there is a priority list. You know, you got to start somewhere, right? We have to start. It's really hard to say, but a couple of things on that. Retirement retirement's always in the background. So you're always saving for retirement. Let's just put that way, right? We have 401ks are great tools for that. Roth IRAs are great tools for that. So if you're putting money into those things, you're kind of saying to yourself, I'm setting this money aside for a long period of time. That's what that's for. I'm probably not going to utilize it now during my normal working years because if I have to take it out now, I'm dealing with penalties and taxes and things like that. And so that's why people put money into those things, because they're telling themselves I'm not going to touch it for a long period of time. So retirement always kind of just sits in the background. Then you said the word debt. So in my opinion, debt has to be mathematically calculated when you pay it off. Okay, that's the right answer, right? It has to be assessed, meaning that you don't just make a decision, throw random numbers at it, and hope for the best, right? You know, a lot of times people, I give this silly little, it's a joke, so don't take it seriously. But when do you want to pay off your debts? When you're poor or when you're rich? You want to pay them off when you're rich, right? Wealthy, right? That's when, not when you're poor. It's hard to pay them off when you're poor. But how do you create that? So the answer is, how do you create wealth inside of things so that you can eventually pay off those? So debt's a tougher challenge. There's a lot of different opinions on paying off debt, how fast or how slow. Some people say it's the first thing you should do. Some people say it's the last thing you should do, and then there's in between. Saving for college, again, you're at a time constraint with saving for kids' college because they're going to only turn 18 at some point in time. So that's a mathematical calculation. So we start off with simple things. Let's first just commit to 15% or 20% of my income. Start there. We start allocating money into the different buckets available to us, the Roths, the 401ks, the paying off the debts. Remember, we have to have a lot of money in the bank, so we want to make sure we're contributing money to having an emergency fund. And then what happens is, what's very interesting about life is life starts giving us new data all the time. And what happens is when we get the new data, we go, wait a second, that's the opportunistic thing to be in now. And that's not so opportunistic now. So financial planning is not one and done. That's the thing people don't understand. There's a constant movement of money from one place to another at different times for different reasons, because the world offers you opportunities and you have to move money around at different places at different times. That's the answer to the question. Even though I know you were looking for a more solid answer, there's way more things to look at than just what's first, what's second.
Well, I just wanted to also say to our attendees, that's one of the reasons we exist, because financial advisors can help you assess those things and answer those questions. And so that's why Advice Chaser exists, is to point you in the right direction, hopefully for you, match you with someone who would be a good fit for you. Well, I have one more question here. Can you talk about maybe some of the biggest mistakes that people make in their budgets or in their cash flow planning?
Well, the first one I said is save last, right? So what the first thing people do is they build their lifestyle around first, and then they create the savings from there. And a lot of times people get stuck. They get stuck because they go, well, I have to pay rent, right? So I'm going to get my house first, or I'm going to buy this house first. So that's the first thing they think of, right? Without considering any other factors. And then they go, well, food costs about this much money, and I'll deal with my food thing. And then my relationship, my travel, my relationship to traveling to and from work. And we start making these life decisions. And then finally we start considering, then we call up the financial planner and go, hey, here's my life. Can I save money? And it, at that point becomes really difficult, because now I'm going to force you to make major life decisions. So what you want to do is, I really love that 15% concept. Set that 15% aside, then start building your life decisions around that. And it's not, it's not fun. It's challenging. When you go and look for, let's say, buying a house, or renting and where you want to live relative to where you work, you've got to consider those factors. Because if you go, oh, this is a great place to live, it's great for my kids, great school system, but you can't save any money, you got a problem. So yeah, that to me is the biggest thing. The other thing is the assumption you spend. The assumption part is really challenging. You can't assume. We don't live in a society anymore where we, like I was saying, we balance our checkbooks. It doesn't exist. It's instantaneous gratification. We don't even have to give people cards anymore to buy things. You click the side of your phone, 2 buttons, done. You got it paid for. Now, we don't even have to go to stores anymore to get stuff. We get them delivered to our homes. Anything that you want is now delivered in a moment's notice. So it's like the fact that you think, the amount of money spent on Amazon is amazing for everybody. They think they spend, $200 a month. They're spending thousands at Amazon and they don't realize it. So I think the fact that we have these tools now that automate a lot of the legwork, that's really helpful, really helpful. And mistakes, I'm trying to think. Yeah, and overspending is the mistake. People overspend. They think that, we really want to get into this position of it's integrity. You have to have integrity with yourself and mindfulness and not giving into the urges. These are all great. There's a lot of books written on being mindfulness and money. And so that's what I would say to them.
Well, that's about all the time we have for questions. If there's a couple more questions coming in, and we will go ahead and save those questions and get back to you on those offline. I want to thank our presenter for being here today. Thank you again. We will have you back, one of our favorite presenters. And we want to thank our attendees for attending. Look for your email for replay soon of this event. And once again, thank you for the organizations who have made it possible for us to present this to you. From Advice Chaser, we're all about helping you find a financial advisor who's a great fit for you and your life and financial questions. Our matching service is free to you, and every one of our advisor partners is committed to offer a free initial consultation to anyone we introduce them to. Find out more by going to advicechaser.com and clicking on the link to find an advisor. Once again, from Advice Chaser, thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you at another webinar soon. Bye, everyone.